Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Josh Forbess. He's the wellness counselor for Clarksville PD. He has an incredible story and he's doing some incredible work in the wellness arena. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Josh Forbess. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, I've been looking forward to this conversation since we originally talked, which has to have been a few weeks ago now by this point. I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about your background. So I know in um, previous to your role now, you were in the military, correct?
Correct.
And in 2003, you were injured and there were no programs or resources really available for you at that time. Can you give us a little bit of background into you and what happened?
So I was deployed to Iraq in 2003 during the initial invasion on November 15th, 2003. Two UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters collided in midair over Mosul, Iraq. I was one of the five lucky or blessed survivors out of 22. Um, I spent 2 months in medically induced coma. I suffered fourth-degree burns, which I did not know existed until after I got burned. So we burned bone or tendon. Um, I woke up in January. Um, the first day I could put to was January 11th, 2004, just because it was a football game on TV. So I can Google that to look back. But don't really, it's the space time continuum was messed up. There was no Facebook back in those days. We didn't have a whole lot of camera phones down range, and they were just brand new. So I couldn't talk to my friends still overseas. Um, and I felt alone. Um, Nothing to been against any of the medical profession that tried to help me, but it was just so new, and we were taking so many severely injured so fast. I don't think that we knew what we were doing, and I mean that in the absolute best way. I don't feel like I got a lot of help mentally. Um, it was just us helping each other out, trying to, um, you know, help help each other out. J.R. Martinez, he was on Dance with the Stars and All My Children. Um, he was in the same 101st Airborne Division with me. He came in our room. He was injured about 7 months before me and was like, "Hey, I am who I am." I remember that. I can't tell my story without telling his. I looked in the mirror for the first time that day, saw me. It distorted me, but I saw me, and I just remember thinking how cool is that? He just walk around talking to the folks, and that's really the MC phases of where we are today. Is how do I just go and make people feel like they're not alone and going through this stuff alone, and it just continue to grow from after that without making this a super long story. So
What do you think was the hardest part of that whole situation? Was there one particular thing that you were like, wow, like that was something I wish that I had resources and it was just the hardest part of that like healing journey for you?
I don't know resource wise. Um, I'm sure that along the way, having somebody who had a shared experience, it was just not knowing, just because of how things were. If you will, was the last of the old school evacuations, if that makes sense. From Vietnam, World War II, Korea, where like we didn't have communication with anybody, no snail mail, anything like that. We were just, I didn't know. And then I was a sole survivor of my men. And
Mm.
so the hardest part for me was survivor's guilt because essentially I kept saying because of my rank, where I was sitting in the helicopter, I got to survive, and they did. So that was really hard. Um, but this is just, it's one of those things until you're ready. And it just takes time.
Yeah.
It's been almost 22 years now, and I still have my days. Everybody has their days, you know, and I always tell people as long as it's less frequent and less intense, you're making progress. It took you how long to get this messed up? It's going to take you how much longer to unmess yourself up. I guess that's done.
Yeah.
But and so, we all want to do this 180. We all just want to do the opposite of what we were doing. New Year's resolutions, whatever you want to call it. But when we don't see that 180 happen the way we want to, we get disgruntled after a couple of weeks. We go right back to where we were, or if not worse. We forget there's 179 degrees in that 180. Baby steps, stealing from, uh, I can't even think of the movie with Bill Murray now. I always quote it. What about Bob? Baby steps, baby steps. Just am I better today than yesterday? Better this week than last week, this month? It's a long, slow process. So understanding that, and maybe that's all I needed to hear is you're not alone. It's a long, slow. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Whatever cliche term you could throw in there,
Yeah.
just whatever it is, so I could relate and be like, okay, got it, thanks. Instead of just doing the polar plunge and trying to figure it out as I went along.
Yeah. I really appreciate that mentality of just one foot in front of the other. And I really do believe that small steps over time create huge impact. But it is hard, especially when you're going through a really hard time and you want it to be over. You want to like wake up and be like miraculously healed and feel 100%. And it's not the reality of the situation, and to have that mentality of like, just try to be better than you were yesterday. Just don't give up and keep putting one foot in front of the other. And eventually you will feel better through various practices or resources or healing. And so I really appreciate that mentality. And it is hard because I do think that there is also a level of impatience that we have with ourselves to, you know, reach a destination.
As fast as quick as we can get it. That's kind of the new mentality. Thank you for that. So, which brings me kind of altering a little bit. So, because of this, we don't want to be in our own emotions, kind of things. Uh, Try to make this as quick as possible. I think that's where substance use comes into play. I was addicted to opioids for a long time. I was an alcoholic for a really long time. And I stopped drinking March 11th of 2001 was the last time I drank. And everybody's rock bottom looks different. I just got sloppy in front of my kids. I remember seeing me looking at my mom at their age going, what am I doing? Um, but so I really started digging deep into this whole, we always drink to forget. We drink to forget. Well, we never forget when we're drinking. And the same thing with my opioid use. I never did it to not feel pain. I did it to try to forget. You always, but you don't forget. Those are mood enhancers. And so, if you're happy and you get drunk, you're a happy drunk. But if you're not, the real mood comes out. And so, you know, after I was doing all this reflection, and my wife and I got COVID at one time, and the whole you couldn't, taste anything. And what did we do for the 2 weeks we had it? We drank like nonstop. We couldn't taste anything. What were we doing? And I remember thinking, as I reflect back, we were just trying to speed up time, because when you're in under substance use, yes, your mood gets worse or your thoughts get worse, whatever, but the space time continuum is all messed up. So next thing you know, it's 3 hours later, 12 hours later, 4 days later, whatever it is. And then, so you really don't have to worry about the effects. I mean, yes, you're dealing with it, but you don't have to deal with it. You can just, repress it and keep moving forward. Um, and it's just funny how we do that. And once again, it's my own personal opinion about that. Everybody looks at it differently, but you just mess with the space time continuum. You just don't want to be in your fields, and eventually you have to at work, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's military. I can be at work from this time to this time. I know exactly what I have to do, purpose, direction, motivation, everything. What do I do with my hands after work? And so you go home, you pound a quick couple real quick to get a bus. So you start messing with that space time continuum. And then you start playing the math. Ooh, I got 2 hours, or I got 1 hour. How much more do I have left? Because you don't know what to do with your time. You're just trying to speed up that time that you're off, because I don't want to be in my own head. Anyway, so
Yeah.
just because you had mentioned that piece about um, the slow baby steps, you have to get to that point where you actually want to address it, though. That's the hard part, is saying, hey, I have a problem. I need to address this. And learning to talk about it is the key, whether it's through journaling and going to burn that letter after you write your true emotions down on a piece of paper, because that is truly relieving. Plus, we're all a bit pyro deep down inside. We like to see fire. Um, or finding a homeless person, taking them to McDonald's, buying them two Happy Meals, and giving them $20 and just talking to them. It's you actually saying what is going on. I mean, how many times have you had a problem, an issue, a concern, where you called a friend? As soon as you started talking about the problem, you're like, I know the answer, and you hang up. It's the same thing with mental health. As soon as you finally start talking about it, instead of chasing rabbits in your head, you hear yourself say something out loud. You're like, that does not make sense at all. Or, hey, this is what makes sense. It's just, I like the term stigma, but how do we get past all this stuff? How do we start learning how to talk about stuff? Sorry, I digress. Soapbox done.
Oh, I think that it's incredibly relatable and um I have my own experience with not wanting to deal with the various traumas and things that I had gone through in my life and I did all of that. I tried to escape and numb and avoid and shove everything down and I never considered the space-time continuum in that way, but I can completely see that. And um, I love that you said it doesn't go away. Like eventually you're going to have to deal with it. And that was my experience. And I know through speaking to a lot of different people on this platform and this podcast that a lot of people have that experience. And unfortunately, it does bubble to the surface. And you do have to deal with it. And a lot of times people don't deal with it until it's like you said, that rock bottom or when it's at a breaking point, or sometimes it's too late. And I, fortunately for me, I mean, I did wait until there was a crossroads moment. Like my life completely blew up, and woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to end up just like my drug addict parents if I don't make a change for myself. And had the ability to have that oh shit moment, and say, okay, like I need to make a change for myself. And I started, seeking out resources to be able to process those things. And part of it was talk therapy. There were other things that I did as well that helped me to offload those things and to, manage anxiety and panic attacks and flashbacks and all the things that I was experiencing in my life. But it wasn't until I woke up on that floor and was like, I'm gonna really really end up in a bad spot if I don't make a change. And I think a lot of people relate to that. And I think, the question mark is, to your point of, how do we make it more normal? How do we create a environment where we can approach these things before it reaches that breaking point? And I think that proactive wellness is always going to be harder than reactive. I think it's human nature, and you can tell me your opinion on this too, but getting someone to deal with something proactively before there's that breaking point is always a little bit tougher.
And that's the key to intervention, obviously.
Hmm.
Part of the reason why I do what I do, um, and how I do it, and the methodology, whatever you want to call it. And it's just what proverbial, one person at a time, 1 foot at a time, 1 step at a time. It's all about creating those weird contacts. And even though it's hard sometimes to challenge our friends because they're our friends, we don't want to challenge our friends. But I'd rather challenge a friend and lose that friend, because were they really your friend if they went away because you challenged their thought process, or
Right.
challenge them to make sure that they're start moving in a better place. Or if you, hey, you haven't done today, I'm good, man. I'm just whatever. Okay, cool. I'm just checking in. I ask people to do sociology experience all the time. The next time you walk into a room and says, hey, how you doing? Don't tell them you're having, oh, I'm good. Just tell them you're having a bad day, just to see if they stop and say anything about it. Why not?
Mm.
If they stop and ask you something, it's probably a good person to talk to. If they just keep walking, okay, no, maybe not. Um, but yeah, I don't know how we. This is always the uphill battle that we're all fighting. Is how do we get interventions early? Um, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more in a little bit. But the things we do to try to prevent them, because we always wait until the worst possible minute, rock bottom. The other way, you're at the peak of the mountain, you don't know what to do. How do we put steps into these things instead of doing the 0 to 100? Let's do a 20, 40, 60, 80, so we can at least have some milestones in there to try to stop and prevent, and keep people before it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about your methodology. I do want to ask you just one more like personal question, if that's okay. You said that the mental part of things was the hardest for you, and you had someone come up and say, I am who I am. Why was that so instrumental in helping you through some of the mental challenges that you were going through that time? And then What did you do after that? Because I know before you stepped into this role, there was some work that you were doing to talk to other people about your experiences.
Trying to condense
I
this
know
into
that
a
was like three different questions in one, but I'm so interested.
trying to condense this into the 3 day time frame that you gave me. Um, so I was very trendy, like a young person. All of us are at a certain age. I was 20 and I deployed to Bosnia, the first time I'd ever seen a third world country. And I was crossing from Croatia into Bosnia in a city called Brčko, and to see it blown up, bullet holes, um, plastic sheets over the sides of walls to create new homes and stuff. I just remember thinking as I crossed this bridge, what am I doing? Like I'm gonna be who I am, regardless of what anybody else. And that kind of changed me from there. Um, I deployed to Kosovo. I was there when 2009/11 happened, then Iraq. But at 26, when I was injured, just JR telling me, "Hey, I am who I am," and obviously he used more colorful language than "I am who I am." Forget everybody else.
Mhm.
That's what I needed to hear to get me back to, "Hey, who are you?" Like kind of thing. Um, because people were describing how I looked, but I thought I looked like the Elephant Man. Um, just sitting there, I couldn't. I had to learn how to walk again, how to use my hands again, all this stuff. So I was literally just lying there in the bed all this time. But when he told me that, I was like, yeah, you know what? I am who I am. And that stuck with me. I tell that to the folks in my office. I tell that to folks on the road. You can only control what you can control. Everything else is just outside noise.
Mhm.
You can control you. That's it. And that stuck with me. I've told him that 1,000 times. And every time I tell that story, it's like, once again, I can't tell my story without telling yours. I hate you for it. You went to Hollywood, and here I am still doing the dirty work. Um, Although he still does it too. But it's just that was I just for me, I needed at that moment. That's what I needed. That simple word. Whether he knew that's what I needed at the moment or not, it just struck. Once again, you never know where these words come from. That was the one that struck me, and here I go. So that was one of the three questions. I don't remember the other ones.
I want to touch on that really quick because I've heard this a lot in, the law enforcement and, first responder world, where it's, the job can change you. And a lot of advice is to remember where you came from and remember who you are. And I would love your opinion on this because some of the things I wrote down when you said that, it's like, remember who the F you are is maybe one of the the colorful
Yep.
languages that were used.
Fire truck. Fire
Um,
truck, yes.
yeah. Um, but you are not the career. You are not what you look like. You are not your past experiences, although like those things may influence you through times, that is not who you are. And to be able to connect with that, like I like sat up a little bit straighter when you said that. I'm like, yeah, like that to me is kind of that like you know, eyebrow down, like, let's go. Like, that's motivating and inspiring to me to like remember who you are and all the other stuff doesn't matter, and you are not all of those other things. And so reconnecting with that to be the motivation to put one foot in front of the other, I think is a really powerful message.
Well, thank you. I, I mean, I talked to all the new hires and in services, and I have a picture of my helicopter crash I put up there, and it says, "What defines me? Who am I?"
Mm,
Yes, I was a soldier. Yes, I'm a therapist. Yes, all this other stuff. But most of us want to be the best parent we can be, the best spouse, the best significant other, the best whatever we do. Work is work, home is home. Yes, it interacts and intermingles a little bit, but when one starts affecting the other, there's a problem. After this is said and done, I'm not going to be the helicopter crash survivor. Yes, technically, but at the same time, that doesn't define who I am.
yeah.
Some of those folks in law enforcement, this is all they know. This is what they define as. Same thing with the military. They don't know what to do after. And I think that's one of the problems is when folks identify this. And then, much like the drinking piece, I don't know what to do with my hands now that it's done.
Mhm.
And that's unfortunately where we start running into problems a year or two after folks get out of this is That's what that identified as. They drank the Kool-Aid. I hate to use that terminology, but they drank the Kool-Aid and lived this life for so long. That's who they are, unfortunately. I'm
Yeah.
glad they were that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long. But now they don't know what to do because that's all they identified as. There's so much other things in this world to identify as and know who you are and what makes you you, and finding those small little things. I'm always preaching about grounding things. I love jigsaw puzzles. I love crossword puzzles, not word searches. That's a huge difference. All right. I'm sure that'll get some comments. But it's all about trying to find the new you. And once again, it's an ever evolving thing. Who you thought you were 2 years ago is not who you are today, and who you're going to be 2 years from now. So it's just trying to identify that whatever you choose to do, that's not all you. Maybe it's 50% you, but what's the other 50% go to? You can't identify 100% one way or the other, because then when that 100% is gone, what are you?
I
Anyway,
also
all right.
think, I think for me, like, I don't want to be the same person I was 2 years ago. I think that if we can, of course, you want to hold on to like certain values that you have, and, but I think to have the mentality of fluidity and growth and evolution throughout your life that so many people want to attach to who they are right now. And to your point, like that is something that's going to evolve and develop throughout your life, hopefully. Like I think that that's the beauty of life is that, who I was when I was 21 looks drastically different than who I am now in my mid 30s. And I welcome that. I don't want to be that 21-year-old because I didn't have any life experience. I wasn't as confident as I am now. I didn't learn certain skill sets that I have now. And so I think that there is, have you heard, this is another maybe cliche expression, but that comparison is the thief of all joy. And I really do believe that. And so often we are stuck comparing who we are now to who we used to be. And it like sucks the joy out of who we are today. And I think that there's so much beauty in who we are today. And if not, then like how can you be aware of that? If you are in a hard time right now, how can you have the awareness and then like you said, start to take those steps to improve yourself over time? But I think so often we like get stuck in wanting to be who we used to be instead of recognizing who we are.
1,000% agree. Trying to stay away from going out, but also what societal norms tell us we're supposed to be as well too. I
Yeah.
always joke, when I was 21, living off of ramen and bologna sandwiches, and you know what? It was a simpler time. I didn't have any money to do anything. We sat around and watched movies and whatever. Yes, it sucked pinching pennies and paycheck to paycheck and this and that. But you know what? It was a simpler time, so it was actually more fun
Mm-hmm.
in one aspect. Yes, I wish I was still able and agile and could do those things. But at the same time, the wisdom is much more fun too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unfortunately, somehow, some way, once again, society tells us we're supposed to feel certain ways about certain things. Um, and using my Maslow's hierarchy, we can't ever get to self-actualization. We
Yeah.
can't stand to look at our own biases, how they affect us, how they affect other people, and just be to have a conversation. There's a lot of things I don't agree with and believe in this and that, but at the same time, one as a therapist, as a human being, I have to respect your ideas, thoughts, beliefs, values. Doesn't mean that I agree with them, but it doesn't bother me. Does it hurt me? Does it hurt you? No, then okay, do whatever you got to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
To, import my belief system on somebody else is worse than anything. So just once again, I try to preach, for lack of a better way to put it, instill in folks, educate, be who you are.
Yeah.
Who are you? When's the last time you looked in the mirror and saw you? Not the shell of you, but when you look in the mirror and said, "Hey, this is who I am." Yeah. All right. I was trying to stay away from that soapbox piece. That's for sure.
I am going to one up you. When I
Oh,
was
there we go. All
when
right.
I was 21, I lived off of instant pancakes because they were cheaper than ramen and bologna sandwiches. All you had to do is add water to this mix And there you go. And I did that for several months before I got my first paycheck. So I'll one up you on that one.
Where were you 5 years ago when I was 21? Oh,
I know.
I
I
wish
went
I
to
would have
the
known about
grocery store
that.
and I was like, ramen's $1 each, and that's for one meal. Or
Where
I
was
can
you
find
shopping
like
when ramen was $1 each?
a
You got
dollar.
to get the ramen that's spelled Ramin. That's only like 9 cents a package.
Oh, well, maybe that was my mistake. Yeah, because I was like, well, pancakes is like $3 for a whole pack, and you can get at least 20, 30 pancakes out of this one.
That's funny. That mayonnaise sandwiches will happen sometimes too. That's funny.
And
Digging
I
through couch looking for change. What? Oh,
100% your car. Um, So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So
hmm
you continued on in the military for a while after your injury, and
hmm
you went around talking to people. Is that what happened before you retired? Like you would go around and talk to people who were injured and try to help them through that situation. Can you explain maybe a little bit about how that started and the things that you would say to these soldiers who were injured? And then I know you retired and we can talk about everything post-retirement, but I'm really interested in how you started traveling around helping injured soldiers.
that was question two. I remember that now.
Yeah.
Um, we'll get to them eventually. Um, so because of JR coming to the room, um, I was like, that guy's cool. Let me be like him. So essentially, I just started going around with him, and we'd go around together. And he had this little goodie cart that he had from the public affairs office: shirts, underwear, socks. I think we had some candy sometimes, hats, just whatever, just goodies to give to folks. And I would go around with him. We just hang out with people because once again, our perception at the time was, oh wow, you've been injured 2 weeks longer than me. You're doing so much better than I am, and like, how are you doing this? And it was just us trying to navigate this together. Um, I left Fort Sam Houston, where I was at the Burn Center, and came back to Fort Campbell. I came back to my unit. I was an administrative NCO, not commissioned officer. I just kind of did all the paperwork in the office since I was non-deployed at the time. But it was nice for me because I got to go back to my unit, and we kind of got to close the loop on everything. I get to find out what happened after I was injured. They kind of got to figure out what happened to me. I was still kind of a member of the team. Um, and that was, in 2004, 2005, the 101st deployed again, and all my buddies left over there, and I stayed back on Ridge Attachment to handle all the stuff. Still here at Fort Campbell. We took 6 casualties in the first couple months and a couple wounded. And I was just, as they were coming back to Fort Campbell, not just my people, but anybody, I would just try to go hang out with them at the hospital if I knew, just once again, not to be alone. Um, and I loved all that. But after that deployment in 2005, 2006 was over, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to retire and call it quits. I couldn't do another deployment and be back on rear detachment. Um, in a weird way, downrange, if something happens, you can kind of repress it and stay focused. I had to deal with those families every day
Mm,
back here. Um, so as I was contemplating that, I ran into somebody who happened to be down at the hospital when I was there. And was like, hey, I have a new job for you. It was called an ombudsman. It was just essentially an advocate for wounded folks. Um, and I did that for a while. And then they stood up a soldier and family assistance center in the Army, which was to help all the folks as they go through their transition out. And I ran that as a non commissioned officer in charge for 3.5 years, plus or minus, closer to 4. I don't know. It's a blur. Um, and it was just, once again, me trying to pay it forward, for lack of better ways to put it. Me trying to get people to focus on the mental aspect of healing. The physical stuff is hard enough. I can't do what I used to do. Even if you sprain your ankle, I hate the term fully recovered because you're never going to be fully recovered. Optimal recovery is what I like to use because you're never going to be the same person you were before. And
yeah.
so, how do we get to these levels of optimal recovery? How to focus on their capabilities instead of their disabilities?
Mm,
Um, and it just kept going. And I was selected to go work at the White House in 2010 to work under President Obama. It was going to be something like the special advisor to the president on wounded warrior and veteran affairs. I was going to work with Matt Flavin, who was in charge of that stuff at the time. The job fell through. Um, and I had somebody ask me where I wanted to go, and I said Landstuhl, Germany, where all the service members come through before they come back to the States, as close to where I could deploy again without having deployed. And I just got to hang out with everybody as they came back through the hospital. It's a weird time during the evac process. You're alone, you're flying all the time, a bunch of different people, a bunch of different countries. You know, for some of them, last thing they remember is being deployed and they wake up in a hospital. And not only that, a hospital in a foreign country. So yes, there are Americans there, but it's also local nationals there amongst other countries, and there's accents, and it's really, really, really weird. To wake up to green scrubs instead of seeing whatever else uniform you had, and it was just to be there. And there were so many times I would just sit there, they'd fall asleep, and I'd just stay by their bedside like a family member. They'd wake up to look at me and go back to sleep. I'd go around and just visit everybody and get them try to focus on the mental aspect of healing. Um, After 4 years over there, I retired. I was done. I was tired of talking to people. About 6 months after I retired, though, I was like, I kind of miss talking to people. So I talked to my wife and I went back to school to get my degree and do this officially. And then just kind of keeps growing from there. So I don't know. Hopefully that covered everything you were asking.
It does. Do you think that your experiences and challenges that you had gave you a unique opportunity to help others and save lives?
I would say yes, not narcissistically, but at the same time, it's just being a caring person. There's such a thing called incident envy, if you've ever talked about that or dealt with that, where
Mm.
two people seeing different incidents, or some people believe I'm way more injured than what they are just because mine is more visible. Ironically, I'm only 11.5% burned. It just happens to be where it got me at. So people assume I'm way more injured than I believe I am. However, um, there are people on the other side that um, I'm not going to describe it like that. So we had an incident here within the city. We had a barricaded suspect. The tag team had to do some stuff. And when I did the debrief, I separated because of shared experiences. You don't need to put somebody who was on, traffic control 5 blocks away. They were stressed out. They had friends down there. They didn't know what was going on. They couldn't listen to the proper channel on the radio, etc. But to put them in the same room as the tag team doesn't make sense, because if that officer at the traffic control point starts about how stressed they were, the tag team would be like, yeah, sure, you were stressed. And now flip that around. If tag starts talking about how stressed they were, now you've minimized what that person's stress was going through, and they don't feel like it was enough. And envy is the wrong word, but at the same time, incident envy essentially is,
Mm.
I don't, your incident is way better or my incident is way better. It's that whole comparison game like you were talking about. But at the same time, we got to get away from that. What you go through is what you go through. I
Yeah.
really, I was a tough leader in the military, and I've had to eat some crow and call some people and apologize about some things. There's probably still more I need to do there too. But I really didn't care about my people, and I think they do that too. And it's all it is be caring about other people.
Yeah.
You know what? And we're hypocrites. We all want to help other people, no matter how bad they're doing. If I'm doing bad and they're doing bad, if they come to me from help, I'm gonna drop what I'm doing. I have going on in my life to help them, but we can't go help ourselves. We can't ask for help.
Mm.
It's really that simple. Um, I know it's not that simple, but it really is that simple. Just, hey, you want to help all these other people? You're going to pick up their slack if they're struggling. Why can't we reach out to other people when we're struggling? Because
Yeah.
of fear of the stigma, whatever you want to call it. And just because, before I forget, I always forget. I define this, and I'm trying to teach people. I lost it. I always forget how my actual to say this, but I've defined stigma, because that's the thing. Is stigma has become the safe word, or the safety net word. Oh, it's because of stigma we're not doing this. Because of that, it's stigma. But can we define stigma?
Mm.
Define what that is. And for me, it's the hesitation to be vocal about our vulnerabilities.
Mm.
Anytime that there's a stigma. That's really what it is. We're just hesitant because we don't want to let people know about our vulnerabilities. And so that becomes a nice safe word, code word, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And once again, if we can get past that, we're getting there. But at the same time, onesies and twosies, we're doing it. I just wish we could do it at threesies and foursies, fivesies and sixsies. Because the world keeps growing, and for everybody to reach out self-actualization, using that word again, that phrase, but we just got to get past how do we just take care of ourselves? How can we take care of others? And I truly believe, going back to why I do all this, help you heal yourself through healing others. Because ironically, even though we're a hypocrite on the other aspect and can't ask people for help, we can't lie to other people when it comes to helping them.
Mm.
Like, hey, how'd you get through this? How did I get through that? Have I gotten through this? Have I handled? How would I handle this? And it forces you to be true with yourself. To be, the phrase, if you've heard this, you can't lie to yourself in front of a mirror or whatever. That's a bunch of crap because I used to lie to myself every day during my opioid addiction. Oh, it's only like 4 pills a day, man. That's not that big a thing. I couldn't lie to other people. Well, I could, but they knew I was full of crap.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just, anyway, I don't know. It's just, once again, we got to get past whatever is that feeling of judgment or vulnerabilities, whatever it is, and break it down so we could just, you know what, stop holding all this in, just talk about it. We got to get there. How to, I started to go off on a tangent, forgot where I was going. I
No,
followed that rabbit down the hole.
I
Bring
really
me back in.
like, yeah, there's two things I want to touch on because I really liked this because again, like I think that a lot of things are relatable. And if we can start relating to these things and being like, I did that, then I think that that's a really good step to also knowing that you're not alone, that other people are also doing these things, and the minimizing of other people's experiences, but also like almost like judging your own experiences if you don't feel like they're as hard as other people's. Like I had that. Like I was there were a couple things. So, one, I was extremely hardened. I was super nasty. I had a very hard exterior. I had no empathy. And it's so interesting because I am an empath at heart. If you go back to like, who are you and like know who you are, like, I am so sensitive to other people. And like, I am very, like, I've always been a people pleaser to a fault. And I've had to work on that, but very much an empath. But at this time, like I was not dealing with my stuff. I had shoved everything down. I had postured up. I had hardened. And I was the worst at minimizing other people. I was the worst at that. If someone came to me and they were like, I'm going through, let's say it was like a divorce, like my parents are getting divorced. I'd be like, so like what, who cares? I've been through all this stuff, and I was very judgmental on other people. I would minimize people all the time. I am not proud of that. I think that is a terrible way to be because how something impacts other people, just because maybe it doesn't impact you the same way, does not mean that it is not a challenge for them and really, really difficult for them. And I think that it is such a disservice to do that to other people. And I think we do kind of get in our own way sometimes because we have our own lived experiences, right? And maybe to me, with what I've gone through, seeing my parents go through a divorce wouldn't impact me, but that does not make it any less severe for them. And then have had the opposite of that, where I went through all of my like um, resources and healing and trying to, be able to evolve and grow and process the things. And then I started seeing the opposite where I'm like, oh, well, they had it way worse than me. And so, like, I don't want to talk about my stuff because, like, they had it way worse. And so, like, I feel like I went from one extreme to the next, and then I had to kind of land in the middle. So, I appreciate you saying that because I think that if we are going to really want to help other people and we're going to say that we want to help other people, then we have to have an open mind to understand that the things that they're going through are unique to them and their experience, and it's going to impact them in different ways. I also loved that definition of stigma. And my question to you is, do you think that vulnerability is the opposite of stigma then? Do you think that that is the key? Is that the opposition?
I like that question. Got to have me ponder on that one a second. Once again, I think it's a context. I think vulnerability can be stigma, and at the same time, in the right or wrong context, it can be opposite of stigma. I guess that's, I don't know if I said that right or not. However, I think it could be parallel, and I think it can be perpendicular to each other.
Yeah.
Um, they go hand in hand, and the other time, if they use it the opposite way, it's some kind of defense mechanism. Um, and vulnerabilities, once again, it's such a word that's got a negative connotation to it. It's just what else do you call it? I mean, I don't know how else to say, oh, I'm feeling weak right now. It's even worse. And saying, hey, I'm feeling soft hearted. All those other words like that are going to have stigmas associated to them too. Everything becomes cool, it gets watered down. Like the unfortunate with mental health stuff. Oh, I'm so bipolar. Oh, I'm so, borderline. I'm so OCD. Um, are you though? No, but it just becomes a cliche thing. And I always joke about OCD because it has to be CDO if it was OCD because it has to be alphabetical. Um, wow, tough crowd. Anyway, so, but kind of going back to what you were talking about with other people is much like law enforcement, and they understand this. What you're doing is you're dealing with a person at their perceived worst time. Yes, more than likely, I know folks have went through way more than I have. Not perceptual. I know folks have gone way less. But at that moment,
Mm,
if that's the worst thing they're going through, be appreciative of that. You know what? I'm glad that I saw the things I saw, did the things I did, so that somebody else wouldn't have to.
yeah.
Somebody has to put the bricks in their backpack. Let me put them in mine. I know what I have to do to get rid of them. Let them talk to me. Yes, once again, not everybody goes through things, and this whole trauma comparison, amongst other things, it's all the same crap. It's just different modalities of it. You have a crappy childhood. I have a crappy childhood. Your parents divorced and look like nothing like my parents divorced. But at the same time, my mom was married multiple times. Don't know if that's, but here we go.
Yeah.
Stop comparing. It's their worst moment. Let them talk about it. If it was less than yours in your opinion, just keep it to yourself. No need to compare. In the moment, that's their worst moment. You
Mhm.
know, um, you know, nobody ever calls the cops because they're having a good day.
Right.
And so that's the thing we preach here. I'm so sure a lot of other people preach that too. But it's you're not having a good day. You know what? Come talk to me. You're not having a good day. Just vent because it's not me. You woke up late, which means you got the kids at school late, which means you showed up to work late. All this, and now I just happen to be the person you're taking it out on. That's fine. I can take it. Just yell at me. I'm fine with that. I'm cool. Just I don't know how we stop that either. Obviously, but we just gotta quit. Just whatever. It's that person's worst time. Just let them talk. Just whatever. How much does that hurt you to hear somebody else talk?
Yeah.
I'm sorry Fifi got out of you know, the yard again with the fence, and here Fifi will put the dog back in the fence for you. Okay, but Granny, that's her worst day right now. Who cares? Just let her talk.
Yeah, I agree. And this can be maybe the last thing I say about this, because I do want to talk about what you guys or what you are doing now today. But for me, vulnerability, I don't think I saw that as a weakness necessarily. I was so afraid of rejection. I think that that was the core for me, is that I didn't want to put myself out there for fear of being rejected by other people. And I think that sometimes if you can have that awareness of why is it hard for me to do these things? What am I actually feeling? And be able to identify that feeling, then that's helpful to be able to push past that. Because, for some people, it might be that they're like, well, I just feel really weak, or that I'm going to be judged, or that I'm going to be rejected, or whatever that is. And if you can sometimes self-identify, okay, where is that barrier? Like, what is like preventing me from taking that step to be able to like help myself, because ultimately, like we said, everything that we talked about, like it's only to make you better. It's only to make you feel better, to make you a better partner, a better parent, a better teammate. So what is that barrier? And I think that sometimes it takes a little bit more of that self-assessment to sit here and say, why why do I have this perception of that? What is preventing me from taking that step?
Agree. I have that same, wow, can't even talk. I have those same talks with my folks is we have to be vulnerable at some point to people to get into each other's lives. It might not, and it's not here's my whole life story, but at some point you have to be like, hey, my name's Josh. That's a vulnerability. Me telling you, and people forget that that's a vulnerability. Just we have to put some better boundaries up and say, hey, within the first 30 minutes, I'm not going to tell my life story about how many surgeries I've had, all this other stuff. It's just going to be this. And after 2 weeks, we'll do this. Because what's happened is when we become vulnerable, because you use the term rejection, and phenomenal word, you've been vulnerable with somebody in the past and it's came back to bite you in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we don't want to feel rejected like that again. I was vulnerable. I told somebody my greatest fears, my greatest whatever, and they used that against me to manipulate me, to control me, to whatever it is. And so we don't want to be vulnerable on anybody in the end anymore. So at some point, baby steps with the vulnerabilities too. Like, but then the first at work, this is all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything else. I'll talk about, hey, I had a great weekend, but not where I went or whatever. Just at some point, but you have to be vulnerable to make friends. It's just unfortunately when somebody tramples all over our vulnerabilities in the past, we don't want to do it anymore. All right, I'm done too.
For sure. So you became a therapist. That was the next
Mm-hmm.
for you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we had our initial conversation, it seemed that maybe you were seeing some things in this space for, therapy with law enforcement, where maybe you saw some room for improvement and you wanted to do things maybe a little bit differently. What were you seeing, or what did you experience that you wanted to change?
Ooh. One, just perception of a therapist.
Mm.
Um, I don't have my ascot on with the 80 sweater vest tied around my neck, with my little fish tank in the office. It's a new office, that's why I don't have all my stuff hanging on the wall yet. But um, it's just being seen as a member of the team. That's the key to all this. Therapy is a conversation. It's not you telling me everything. I give you some CBT paperwork to go home and fill out and bring it back to me, and I grade it like I'm some kind of teacher. It's a conversation. I share way more than most therapists do. Plus, I'm a member of the team, so it's a different dynamic. Um, so once again, just trying to get things at the lowest level possible. So if people are struggling, getting close to burnout, vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, whatever you want to call it there, having some moral injuries, a third of my job is political. I joke about that when I knew that when I took this job. But what is the return on investment? What is taking one of these officers who's struggling, put them in a temporary duty for somewhere, uh, somewhere useful, somewhere where they still have a job, not someplace where they just go sit, and in their thoughts, or give them a week off to go home and sit in their thoughts. What are they going to do? They're going to drink. They're going to not do anything, play video games, and they're never going to try to do anything to get themselves better. Get them actively engaged in something, some treatment in between there. And what is a pay cycle? What is 28 days of an officer's salary versus another 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Or the plus or minus 160 it costs to get somebody through the door, not counting academy and FTO time. And then, what are we doing? What does that look like? If you send them someplace and say they go to criminal investigations for a month, they're doing stuff. They're not going to get tasked with a lot of stuff because they know they're only there temporarily, but they look at things differently. So now, as a patrol officer, now they look at things from the CI perspective. This it's all encompassing. We always wait until it's the worst possible moment. Oh, we got to get this person inpatient. We got to do this. We got to do that. Why not start it sooner?
Hmm.
Um, we have sent 11 people to TDY, temporary duty, in the departments I've been here for kind of quote unquote mental health emergency type reasons. 10 of them are still employed here. A few of them have been promoted. And the one that is no longer employed here, I still consider a victory. They didn't do anything personally or professionally to make us or them look stupid or bad. And the chief actually offered the invitation for them to come back if they ever wanted to. They just realized the law enforcement's not for them. So they're never coming back. But all that to say is we let people make a rational decision instead of getting to that point of stress where I don't know what to do. I can just quit my job. And then 6 months later, how many people have you seen in your life 6 months later quit their job, do whatever? Like, oh, I should have never quit that job. They were just burned out.
Yeah.
Give somebody a chance to make a rational decision about their future and let that be that. And we don't have to know what we want to do. Not knowing what you don't want to do is still making a decision. So let them make a rational decision and then move on. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I'm gonna have to start doing math or something. How many years of the department have I saved, or how many more years have I added on by keeping these 10 people, still on board, not making horrible decisions and, or making a possible bad decision at the time to call it quits. Um, it, it's just, it's the people business. We just forget that we get stressed out. We can't think about what's going on. It's just give people a break. If you have an agency big enough to be able to do that, by all means too. But sometimes you just, because once again, I'll do anything to make anybody get better. I just can't say, hey, I need help. So sometimes it just takes a little extra push for me saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this out of your hands. We're going to put you someplace else if you agree to it. And then, hey, let's just have some conversations over the next couple of weeks and see where we're at.
I want to kind of outline some of the things that you said because I love this. So, step one, be seen as a part of the team, not some like random outside, like you think really trying to integrate into that team mentality, having conversations and really positioning it as that. Like, we are just having a conversation. Like, I am not judging you. I am not giving you homework. Like, we are going to have just an open conversation. Do this before it's a huge crisis, if possible. Keep them active in the department if possible, but like really the ultimate goal is to like get them help so that if they want to come back, they have the opportunity to come back. And my question for you, because this comes up all the time, and I think this goes back to like stigma, um, do you think that those steps and strategies that you have in place build trust? And do you think that by people seeing that other people have had the opportunity to come back and have a successful career after this is then reinforcing that trust?
So I'm gonna steal a line from a friend of mine. I want you to be the best story that I can't share. Um,
Mm,
so obviously I can't tell anybody any of these things. The only people that really know are myself and the chief when we make things happen. Yes, we let their chain of command know that this person isn't going to be there, and the new chain of command know that this person is going to be there. But people go on temporary duties all the time in the department. Um, if somebody is a little more high needs, we're going to put them someplace where we can pay attention to them a little bit more, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But other than that, treat them like an officer. Nobody wants to be treated special. I just need a moment to relax, reset, rehabilitate, any of those other words, and just refocus. Um, I forgot what the second part of your question was. It's just, I don't know.
Building
Once again,
trust.
it's simple people skills, just being in the people business.
Yeah. And just building trust was my question because
Mhm.
one of the things is, I think people are looking to see what happens to other people. Do they come back? Do they not? Are they treated well? Are they not? And it is to your point that it's a people business. And I think that if there's already distrust, which we know does happen in some agencies, maybe because of past experiences or things that have happened, that people are extra cautious to see, okay, well, this guy was vulnerable and did take those steps to get help and wasn't treated very well and it didn't have a very good outcome. And so now I definitely don't want to do that for myself. And so I think that was my question of, do you think that through these strategies over time, because people are watching to see what happens, that that is helping to build trust and therefore helping to build receptiveness to reaching out if and when they need resources?
Again, 1,001%. Um, Ironically, my first weekend on the job, I had three phone calls. One was from a peer supporter with an officer with suicidal ideations. Uh, my peer coordinators were up and down. It wasn't like that every weekend. Sure, buddy. Um, but this kind of was a really good win for us, first off. Like, instead of 6 months before somebody came to see me, we hit the ground running. Of our first temporary duty. It turned out well, kind of got, a really good positive in the beginning. But amongst that small peer group, the stories were shared, and then once again, word of mouth, because we're such a tight knit organization and believe in rumors and I don't trust other people. And so all these wins we've had has just been slow for the 2.5 years I've been here. Nothing, luckily, but wins overall. And so within reason, the word has gotten out there. But the fact that I have body armor, I have a radio, I when I go to calls, I'm a member of the team. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not an outlier. I have 511s on. I, as much as I can be, I'm as embedded as I can be. Um, and once again, there was a specific officer who unfortunately had strong suicide ideations. He's still here. He's been promoted and all this stuff since, but we had to have him on a 2 month kind of temporary duty while they were doing some intensive outpatient stuff and command, and they were a little antsy, for lack of ways to put it, about, hey, this whole timeline thing, like, when's he coming back? Once again, shoulder surgery, 8 to 12 weeks. Some are back sooner, some take longer. Just relax. I don't want to call it a sickness because I hate when mental health is called a sickness,
I agree. Yeah.
but you're ill. Like, you need a break. um and there was an incident with this officer before that there were some trust issues from the department. I was like, fine, don't trust the department, trust me, because they're going to do what I tell them to do. And this has shown this loyalty goes both ways,
Hmm.
by the chiefs, the mayor, the city council giving me this authority, for lack of better to put it, this lateral movement, this fluidity, to use your term. They have seen now this loyalty is going both ways. There's still some skepticism, obviously, amongst the ranks, that always going to be there. But that's a selling point. If they know the department has their back, if something happens, that means a lot.
Yeah.
And we worked hard trying to change this. I want to say we had a bad, what's the word I'm looking for? Morale in the unit before, in the department before, but this just adds, like, the fact that if I start going through something, the department's going to step up and have my back, give me time to make a rational decision, and then whatever it is what it is. Because, I mean, once again, it's the people business in the bigger picture. Um, yes, recruitment, retention, all that other stuff, but are they going to be the best person that they could be?
Yeah.
You know what? If they're the best person they could be in or out of the department, it's a win. I'm good. I've done my job.
I think that that story of the individual with suicidal ideations getting through it, still having a job, has been promoted is such a great story. And I think it's a reminder to anyone who's listening who may be struggling that there is growth and there is freedom and there is opportunity for healing. Just don't quit, right? Keep putting one foot in front of the other, reach out for the resources. I love that story. And I know you said ROI. And if anyone who's listening maybe doesn't know what that acronym is, it's return on investment, right? So, what is the return on investment for these efforts? And I think it's really important to be able to identify those things because if you are in a position where you're helping people or you're trying to help people, but it's not actually helping people, then there's there's a disconnect there, right? There's an issue there because if and I say this all the time, like if I'm helping someone, if someone comes to me and they're like, I have back pain, and I'm like, all right, do all these things for back pain, but their back pain's not getting better, then to me that's not a success, right? So we need to know like what is that return on investment that is happening. Uh, my question to you is What do you want agencies to understand about the long-term impact of doing this and what that ROI truly is for the organization and for the individual?
Oh, good Lord, you gonna prep me with this question? No.
It's one of my last questions, so we'll be off the hot seat very soon.
Excuse me. Um, man, I I think decades ago we got away from the people business and moved into the numbers business.
Mm,
I think we're slowly moving away from the numbers business, getting back into the people business, which is phenomenal. A lot of the senior leadership now, 30 years ago ish, when I joined the military and they started in law enforcement, would I have talked to me? No, I would have talked to me. Was that because I was a knucklehead because it wasn't accepted? Yeah, it's a little bit of it, but I knew who I was. But again, from the day at the PT test, I'm out there at the PT test, from the offers, swearing in, I'm with the new recruits as much as I can be. And, one of my colleagues is like, be proud that you come into an apartment that's never not going to have a wellness counselor. So it's accepted from the get go. It's not just 6 months after they get out of the academy, finally 2 years out of the department, they get to meet me. I'm there all the time, once again, as a member of the team. And so breaking that stigma, and all of us seasoned folks realized we could have used me all those years ago. And it's nice to pay it forward and say, hey, you should go talk to somebody. Yes, we're happy. We need kind of validation of how we handled things. And there's probably still a few things we haven't handled yet, but they're coming in and they're like, hey, you know what? This is really a great program. Um, they're sharing their stories with others. They're mentoring, whether you call that peer support or not, mentoring, it is a difference. But at the same time, they see it. And so as long as we keep in the people business, you're going to keep being successful. When you start looking at things as numbers, start looking at it as a corporation instead of people, that's when we start having problems.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I could keep going on and following rabbits down holes all over the place with this and get on soapboxes, but it all starts with a person. How do we take care of the people? There's an old 80s commercial with Dan Marino from Acetone Gloves. Take care of the hands that take care of you. You got to take care of these people. Um, as a leader in the military, I used to always say, I have the umbrella to keep all the crap off of us. That's what I'm here for. Your job is to do everything underneath me. I'm the umbrella. Just don't make me stand in crap while I'm holding the umbrella. So hopefully that makes sense. But at the same time, take care of these folks. You
Yeah.
know, once again, I'm a big proponent of loyalty goes both ways. Get out there. When's the last time you got out there and rode in a car with somebody? I could tell you the first time I met a general because it was the first time I met a general. When's the last time a chief of police or deputy chief or a captain got into a car with a new kid and just rode along? Not to assess them, just to ride along. That's going to mean more. They're going to talk about that 20 years later in their career. Remember when Captain so and so came and rode along with me? That's just the people business.
Yeah.
Just be a person. Even if it's only 2 hours once a month, just do something silly like that. That's going to boost the morale. And the more it's normalized, another keyword, hot button word, whatever right now, as long as it's normalized, nobody thinks different of it. But if you're only there when something good or bad is happening, they know. So make it random, make it normal, just like everything else. Make mental health normal, make whatever normal is.
I loved that answer because I agree with you. I think so often, and I think, of course, there's a time and place for certain things, especially when there's funding and funding is challenging, and I understand wanting to know the ROI from a money perspective, but I really loved the answer of like this is like the ROI is the longevity of your people. Like that is the ROI is to invest these resources so that your team, your people can have and the one thing I always say it's not surviving the career. And I think that that is such a bare minimum to say like we want people to survive this career because of course we do. Yes, 100% we want you to survive this career. That is bare minimum. We want you to thrive. I think there has to be an elevation of that concept of like, we want you to be the best version of yourself in whatever we got to do to get you there. And so I love that you said the ROI is into your people, is the longevity and the wellness of your people, because it is. And I think sometimes you do get caught up sometimes in the money game or the numbers of things. And it really, really should be, is this benefiting your people? Is this helping them to have a longer and more successful career? Is this helping them to be better partners, better teammates? Is this helping them to have a long and successful retirement because they have the tools to be able to transition into retirement and thrive into retirement? So I loved that answer. My final question for you, and I promise, well, I shouldn't promise. I don't
I
think this
don't promise yet.
I'm not going to promise. I don't think that this one is too crazy, but what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? You know, maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Really simple, honestly. Um, I tell this to a lot of my folks too, and I realize this at a younger age. You know that whole "what would you tell 16-year-old self" and this and that. Simple. It's not your fault.
Mm,
It's not your fault. We all make mistakes. As long as you didn't intentionally do something that you knew was wrong, illegal, morally incorrect, etc., it's not your fault. It's okay. How do we learn from it and overcome this? How do we not feel rejected? How do we not feel like we want to be vulnerable with anybody anymore? It's okay. It's not your fault. Just, I got it. Correct a course of action. You know, we're in this feeling of or period of words of affirmation and validation for everybody. Nothing wrong with that. But there's also a thing from the old school that's no news is good news. If you're not getting your butt chewed, there's nothing wrong with that either. Just because you're not saying, hey, add a girl, add a boy for everything, you're just doing your job. That's fine. Above and beyond, then maybe they'll talk to you about it. But if you're not getting your butt chewed, you're doing your job. There's nothing wrong with it. But once again, going back to what I said, it's not your fault. Um, Figure out how to alter your thinking, figure out how to change. You know, I'm a perfectionist. I replay every conversation, every class, every day. At the end of the day, it's like, oh, I missed a moment there. I should have said this. I'm going to do this about this podcast. Look, it's just who I am. I like constructive criticism because I like to be the best. Yes, it's going to hurt, but at the same time, I want to know how I can fix myself. But you can't fix yourself if you can't be okay with it, you know? So
yeah.
it's not your fault. If you weren't trained or taught how to do that, if you didn't know the stove was hot, how are you going to know the stove's not hot unless you touch it? Okay, I know the stove's hot. I'm not going to touch it anymore. It's not your fault. You got this. Keep moving forward. I don't know. I got tons of motivational sayings, but it's not your fault. You said one, that's it. It's not your fault.
I love it. Thank you for your time. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on here, and I'm in the same boat with you. I tell everyone because I have to review every podcast that I do. And so the self assessment that I do is the same. But I thought this conversation was great. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and what you're doing today in law enforcement wellness. And thank you,
Thank you.
of course.